Let me
on it.
ask you
So
this. Let's
yeah,
talk about some of the challenges that are facing people like you right now in Canada, because
yes,
of course it's becoming more and more difficult. It seems because of things that our governments are doing to produce these positive outcomes for clients. And one recent thing was, of course, an announcement by Canada's Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland in support of the Liberals' new capital gains tax, which seems to be something that is very dangerous. What do you think is motivating the Liberal government in terms of taxing capital gains, and what sorts of challenges does that pose to people like you who are in the business of investment and want to
hmm
encourage investors not only in Canada but outside of Canada to invest in Canadian business and in our economy so that our economy will grow? What sorts of challenges do uh, uh, these legislative changes pose to people like you and your business?
yeah. So starting with what's happening and what's happening is really nothing new. I mean, we've seen this broken record played out before, time and time again, in years and decades past, and in other parts of the world. And there's been, to the best of my knowledge, no known examples where the type of strategy that the current Liberal government is using has been successful. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know if you, Leighton, know the strategy basically where we're losing in the polls because many reasons. People obviously don't like us, so we're gonna break out the age old I don't even want to call it a trick or a line where we're going to do the class warfare.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
know that the majority of the voters at the end of the day, statistically speaking, it's that old 80-20 Pareto principle. If you go back to Pareto's law,
Yeah.
where
The 80-20.
20%,
Yeah. Yeah.
80-20, where
Hmm.
20% of anything, people in this case, make 80% of the income, and the other 80%, all the other 80% only make 20% of the income. So what they're doing is, it's old as politics itself. They're just going to the 80% and saying, well, how about we uh, tax the 20? But they're saying one. But I mean,
Yeah.
it could be easily stated that this could affect even 20, that like the whole 20, especially
Yeah.
if you're talking about taxes on real estate or selling secondary properties, cottages, rental units, you name it. Like, this tax could apply to a lot more people than what the government is admitting to. I
Hmm.
mean, again, going back to math, the math just doesn't work. It it
Hmm.
it it,
Hmm.
it does not work at all. You end up having less capital in the productive element, which are also the employers. These are the people that actually have businesses. They have employees. They provide employment. So they have less money, less capital to pay their employees. So they now need to have less employees or pay them less. It's not good. Now, in terms
Hmm.
of what this means for Canada, and this is the sad and unfortunate part. So as a portfolio manager, and this is also not just my view, but the view of our firm, Wellington Altus. And we've been quite clear on this. Is at the end of the day, we don't wish to have home country bias, so we don't want to be biased towards our home country, which is Canada. We have a fiduciary duty and a fiduciary responsibility to our clients to do the very best job we can for them, and not to let politics or home country bias or anything stand in the way of that. So, what does that mean for us in practice? It means that we have far less money in Canada right now today than we would have had in previous years. And the reason for that is a lot of what you just described. That the economic policies that are being imposed in Canada are counterproductive. They're bad for Canada. They're bad for Canadians. They're taking the country in the wrong direction. And as an investor who invests on behalf of our clients who we cherish dearly, and we want to do the best job that we can for them, that means that we have had to pull out a significant amount of our capital that we have invested and place it outside of Canada and places like the United States and
Hmm.
and and, and other areas until such a time that certain policies change.
Hmm.
So
Well, so that's one of the challenges facing Canadian investors and people like you who provide them with advice. The other thing that is impacting them is geopolitical instability,
mhm,
and sort of connecting the dots. Your Serbian background and what's
yes,
going on over in Europe. I caught an interview that you may have seen. The Serbian president Alexander Vucic. I hope I'm saying his name correctly,
pretty good.
gave a very impressive interview. I saw a clip where he basically said that he was not going to permit the Serbian people to get involved in this war over there, that he was not willing to sacrifice even a single life of a Serbian citizen to the Ukraine war. But I wonder if this is something that you are watching closely. Um, having someone of being someone of European heritage, but also
Definitely.
watching this as someone who is in your business, this geopolitical instability that war is causing. What sorts of challenges is that situation posing for you in your work?
So it's definitely when we're shaping and modeling portfolios, something called global macro or global macroeconomics, which then dives into geopolitics, has a very important element in portfolio construction.
Hmm.
You have to understand the game, essentially, if you want to call it that,
Hmm.
before you attempt to play it. Because if you don't understand it and then you go out and play it, you could lose. And it's very complex, but specifically if focusing on Europe, Serbia, and Ukraine. I actually like Alexander Vucic. I believe he's a competent individual, a competent leader, and I believe that he's doing the very best that he can, given very difficult circumstances. And the circumstances that he's in are something like this: he's basically under a lot of pressure from two opposing sides. So he's doing is the very best that he can to stay as neutral, as Swiss like, if you want to call it, as
Hmm.
possible, which is very difficult to do because both sides want him to pick a side. He's
Hmm.
trying his very best to not pick a side.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that he could circumnavigate that is to try to do his best to diffuse the war in Ukraine,
Hmm.
because it's that war in Ukraine that's causing a lot of the pressure that's being put on him from both ends. If that
Hmm.
war were to subside or end, then that pressure should also, to at least to some degree, subside.
Yeah.
So that's why he's being quite frank, open, and honest about the dangers of this war continuing, and why essentially both sides really should try to
Yeah.
come to the bargaining table and come together with a peace deal.
One of the
It'd
things
be
that was
the
so
best.
impressive about listening to him, Peter, was that he's so dedicated to peace, and he expressed concern that we're on the precipice of war, and so when I watched that clip, I thought, wow, this guy really gets it, and I wish that we had that kind of leadership in Canada at the moment. But I want to ask you something else. Now, this is kind of a person of a personal nature, but you're a Christian, you're a person of faith, and yet
Yes.
you work in an industry where, let's face it, there's a lot of money, and where
Mhm.
there's a lot of money, there's a great deal of temptation. So how do you manage that in your work? Because I see you sort of working in an area not unlike law, where
Mhm.
you're on the razor's edge. There's always a temptation, but how do you manage that in your daily life and your practice? That's got to be difficult for you.
Yeah, another great question. And so a similar answer would be true with my wife, who is, like as you mentioned earlier, is a lawyer.
Hmm.
It has not, and being Christian, and I'm a just to back up a bit. I'm a very devout Orthodox Christian.
Hmm.
I'm a member of the Saint Simeon Serbian Orthodox Church. Just south of Calgary in De Winton.
Hmm.
And the My most favorite thing that I do every week is go to church and attend divine liturgy. That's actually the one thing in the week that I look forward to the most. So this has helped me, not hurt me.
Mm.
In every way imaginable, it has helped me, and it keeps me out of trouble. It keeps me, from doing the wrong thing, keeps me doing the right thing. And what happens is over time is that people notice this. Our clients notice this.
Hmm.
Um, and they don't have to be Christian either. They could be atheist, but they just
Sure.
notice that we just operate on a different ethical standard. So I can't tell you how much this has actually been a blessing,
Hmm.
and not a hindrance. And certainly, when we do come across things that just don't fit the mold, we stay away from it. And what ends up happening as well is over time, you end up attracting the people, not just our employees. So partly, yes, our employees, but you attract people that are like-minded, and that from an ethical standpoint, they're on the same wavelength, and it just creates,
Hmm.
let's call it symbiosis.
Yeah.
So, so
What a great
yeah,
message that is for the people who are
yeah.
listening to this and
Mhm.
watching it. And what a great pleasure it has been spending some time with you, Peter, and getting to know you better and what you do. We're going to turn now to our reading list. I know you've got some great selections for us. And I'm going to,
Yes.
as we always do, we're going to give you the last word. I've chosen a couple of books that I read, and I didn't understand these books as well as I do now, having gotten to know you a little bit more the first time I read them.
Hmm.
But these are two books by Ray Dalio. One of the first book is called Principles, which he wrote. It was
Yes.
released in 2017. And this book tells the story of Ray Dalio, one of the world's most successful investors and entrepreneurs. Many of the principles that are talked about in his book are ones that you have elucidated for us today and really illuminated and sort of breathed life into. The second book, which is sort of a sequel to the first one, it's called Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order. Anyway, those are my two selections. I'm interested to hear what yours are, Peter.
I have two as well, although they're very short. They're very short, easy reads, and one is more of a paper than it is a book. The first one is a book by a Father John Romanides called Romans, Feudalism and Doctrine. This book is fascinating. It really is that kind of formative in terms of the history of Christianity.
Fascinating.
Um, and the other one is actually a paper. He's a portfolio manager in Texas. His name is Chris Cole. He owns Artemis Capital Management,
Mm.
and he wrote this paper called "The Allegory of the Hawk and Serpent." And he coined it "How to Grow and Protect Wealth for 100 Years." But it's a paper that, when I read it, it blew my mind.
Wow, we're so grateful. Those are such original selections, and we're happy to add those to our reading list. And what a
Mhm.
pleasure this has been getting to know you better, Peter. And what an education it's been. Even though it's only been an hour with you,
Mhm.
I find that just in this time with you, I've grown in my own understanding. So I can't even imagine what it would be like for our viewers and listeners who hopefully are smarter than the host. But what a pleasure it's been to have you as our special guest today, and want to thank you again for taking the time to share with us what you do and why you do it and how you do it, and for being our special guest here on Gray Matter.
Oh, you're welcome. And like I said earlier, the pleasure is all mine. This has been a real treat that I will cherish. Thank you.